This will be the second video in a series of videos that I wanted to do that explain how to go from playing power chords and maybe a minor scale to understanding how music theory works and being able to connect it and being able to understand how music works a little more than you did before, which opens all these doors. And then you can always play something really musical and you can understand harmony and melody. And it goes deep, really deep, and you can study it for years. But I thought it would be good to provide a roadmap. So I didn't really have a roadmap. I had to find other ways to figure out what to learn in what order. So this is a roadmap to learn these things in this order, where I just basically scratch the surface and be like, here's the topic and some stuff around it. And you go on your own and go decide how deep you want to go. So I did one on the major scale, which talked about those intervals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. In this video, I'm going to take those same intervals that we had, and I'm going to place chords on them, so you know what chords are in a key, and you'll be able to jump back and forth and understand what a 1, 4, 5 is, or a 1, 4, 5, 6. So on and so forth. All right, so each chord in the key is either going to be major or minor, with the exception of one chord, and that's the 7 chord, and it's going to be diminished. And we're not even going to touch on that. We're only going to talk about the major and minor chords. And you can refer back to the first video that I'll probably link somewhere if you're unsure of the intervals. But the intervals, the 1 is going to be major, the 2 will be minor, 3 will be minor, 4 is major again, 5 is major again, 6 is minor. The 7 is the diminished chord, and then the root is major again. So minor, minor. It's good to kind of get this in your ear. Skip the diminished, back to the root. Okay, so each chord is going to be associated with a number, and they're Roman numerals, but they're like uppercase and lowercase depending on what it is. So the first chord in the key is going to be the I. It's going to look like an I for Roman numeral 1. The second one is going to be 2 lowercase i's for 2. Minor chords are always going to be lowercase. Major chords will always be uppercase. And when you see the 3 somewhere, that's going to be 3 lowercase i's, right? And now we're going to go back to uppercase for the majors. So this would be I, V for 4, just a V for 5, back to lowercase. So you're going to have VI for 6. And for this diminished chord, you're going to have VII, but you're going to have like a little circle there for the diminished symbol. I'll try to put that in, or at least put a link to where you can learn more about that. Back to the root. So I, lowercase I, lowercase I, uppercase IV, uppercase V, lowercase VI. Don't worry about the 7. And then back to the root. So those are the major, minor chords, and whenever you see those Roman numerals, that will indicate what chord somebody's referring to. That's part of the language of understanding music theory. Every chord is going to be built off the first, the third, and the fifth of that scale, depending if it's a major scale or a minor scale. I really haven't talked about minor scales much. We'll touch on that briefly. But the first, the third, and the fifth, all the way across, that's all it is. So 1, right, 2, 3 would be the B, and then 4 C, 5 D, right? So a G major chord, the 1 in G is G, E, D, or you play here G, E, D, right? This is G, E, D. So G, E, that's the 5. Back to the root, that's the G. Here's the B, that's the third. The third is the most important note in any of these chords. It's going to dictate whether it's major or minor, and it's going to give it that sound. I'll demonstrate that in a second. D, G. That's the major chord. Any major chord rooted on this string is going to be like this. But again, shapes are not nearly as important as understanding what notes make up this chord. The 2 is a minor. Now, I mentioned that minor is a little different, and all of these chords depend on the third is the most important. So the minor scale, real quick, is a major scale with a flat 3 and a flat 7. So that means instead of 1, 2, 3, we're 1, 2, 3. And then the flat 7, which is down here, would be flat 7, 3, 4, 5. I actually think I did that wrong first time. That's the minor key. So to build the chord, A, C, E. So A, E, A, C, E, A. That'll always build a minor chord. And again, the third is the important thing. So that's major, that's minor, and you should be able to hear that. So G minor would be this, G major is this. It's the only difference. So this is the most important note. Minor. The 3 is also minor, so same pattern, right? So B minor, B, D, F sharp, B, F sharp, B again, D, F sharp, B. Okay. I'm going to show you how to play that in one other position so you understand this third rule, right? That's the D minor. You can also play the 3 here because 1, 2, 3. You notice it looks like the major chord now. That's this third. Same notes. B, D, F sharp, B, D, F sharp. So B, F sharp, B. That's the D. It's F sharp. Minor. Same chord, different position. Again, the most important thing are these notes. Okay, major, minor, minor, to the major. 3 notes, 1, 3, 5, D, E, G, D, G, so 1, 5, 1, 3, 5, D. That's all the way down, except for this G. And I just never play that part. Most people don't. You can try to like bar across that and do something like that. It's not necessary. That's the major chord. You do the same thing for here. Again, 3 notes. D, F sharp, A. 1, 3, 5. So 1, 5, 1, 3, 5. And then like our B down here, we have an E. And remember, flat 3, flat 7. E, G, B. We're going to skip the diminished, and then we go back to our root. So that's a major chord here, and that's minor. Major, or minor. Those are all the chords in the key. I'm going to talk a little bit about chord function and go over some popular chord progressions to understand how these things relate together. So the 1 is always the tonic, okay? The 5 is always going to be dominant. The dominant wants to pull to the 1, right? So that's why when you're like, it resolves, it feels like home. The 4 is called a subdominant chord, right? That's why it leads to the 5. comfortable coming from 4, and then the 5 gets back to the 1. That's the popular 1-4-5, right? So you can play the 1 for a while. And you could jam on that all day in any key, and then you can play your major scale over that. That would be a good practice to kind of get some musical stuff down. The other popular progression that is, I don't know, maybe thousands of songs, contains the 1, the 4, the 5, and the 6 in varying patterns. Sometimes it's 1, 4, 6, 5, 4, 1, whatever. It's those chords. The reason it works, tonic, subdominant leads to the dominant leads to the 1. The relative minor, remember our notes for the major, the 1 chord of major is G, B, D. For the relative minor, I'm sorry, G, G, B, D. Relative minor is E, G, B. So the only difference is this D, right? Those are in here. Same thing. The only thing that's different is here. They're so close that they fuel back to each other. So when you're doing that, you can do any pattern of and you could even do the go from the 1, 4 to the 6. So that's how they're going to build chord progressions out of there. And there's some stuff with the 2 and the 3, but we won't go into that. As long as you know, this is a great start. And those are called chord functions, if you want to look those up, and then understand how they relate to each other. There are some rules around that. They can be broken, but those are the basic building blocks. All right, the last part I want to talk about. So once you understand the first, the third, and the fifth for all chords, you understand how to build them. You can build them anywhere. They don't have to be here. They can be here. This is a G because it has the D, the G, and the B. The D, G. It's the same thing. That can be part of the caged system, which you may or may not have heard of, which is a way to put a fancy, rememberable acronym around building chords, where you use the finger as the nut. So C chord, A chord, G chord, E chord, and D chord. So in C, you have that chord, right? And then the A shape would be this, because it's the same as this. But your finger becomes the nut. So that's C. The G is a little more tricky, because it's going to be like this, right? So that is, if your finger is the nut, it's essentially the shape, right? What you need. So that's a great sounding chord too. Same intervals, right? C, C, E, G, which makes up the C chord. C, G, C, G. Okay. It was G. E is easy, right? So E is this. But if you use the nut as your finger, it becomes this. Same thing. this. This is a D chord that you probably know already from power chords and stuff, right? Where this note here is the D. So this is the 5, the 1, and the 3. So you put it up here. And that's the D. That's the whole cage thing. Now, if you do that in every key, you have a ton of chords to choose from, depending on what you're trying to get out of a particular part of a song. And it gives you this incredible fretboard fluency because you know where all these chords shape. And now you can solo out of those that I'll talk about in a couple weeks, hopefully. The only disclaimer is this is as you move this up, this C chord, that's really easy here. Like if we were to do that for E, it becomes this. That's the same thing as this, with your finger as the nut. Okay, and that's the cage system. So that's a brief introduction to diatonic chords, and I would dive deep on these. I'm a firm believer that chords are everything when it comes to guitar. Like your favorite guitar player that plays your favorite guitar solo is chordal. They all are. That's what makes things sound good when people are playing these chords, right? They're all chord shapes. So I would do a deep dive on chord shapes. Hopefully this helps. And that's it. Until next time. See ya.